All right. Good morning. We don't do that here. All right, so we're going to do 3 things today. So our bacon, if you remember last week, we put our bacon in a dry cure, right? Do you remember what was the special salt we used in that dry cure? Nitrite. Not nitrate. Nitrite, right?
All from the bacon.
Yeah, so remember that nitrite is for short cures, right? And usually it's cooked afterwards. And nitrate is for a long cure because the nitrate oxidizes and becomes nitrite. And why do we use nitrites and nitrates? To prevent something? Bacteria. Bad bacteria. Remember there's good and bad, right? That yogurt, really good for you, right? Kimchi, very good for you. That's all good bacteria. Bad bacteria, that's just right? Bad bacteria. So we're trying to avoid that. So our bacon is still curing. So what I'm going to do is on Friday, I'm going to take it out, I'm going to wash it, I'm going to leave it over the weekend, and then I'm going to come here Monday morning and I'm going to smoke it all day from probably about 8 in the morning till about 7 p.m. at night. So about 11 hours of smoking. So next Wednesday when we come to school or class, you'll see the finished product. Okay? Now, the pastrami, remember we put this also into a cure last week? So what was the type of cure we used for this? Wet cure. What's the other name for a wet cure? It begins with a B. Brine. A brine, right? A brine is basically salt curing. So, for example, pickles are cured, right? They're put into a brine, so they're cured. This I left in the fridge last night, or yesterday. I took it out of the brine, I washed it, and then I left it overnight in the fridge because I want to develop something. Do you guys remember what that is? It begins with a P.
Parsley.
Not parsley. Do you say parsley? I love parsley, by the way. But no, we're not trying to develop parsley. But close. It begins with a P. Pellicle. You looked that up. I can tell. Pellicle, because nobody gets it right away like that. Nobody's just like, pellicle. Yeah, I knew that right away. Yeah. I was going to say that, but when someone said parsley, I was like, well, maybe parsley. Pellicle. Yeah. So the pellicle is kind of the sticky, slightly tacky surface on a meat. Okay. Why is the pellicle important? We're going to put this into the smoker, right?
Yes, if it's smoke something to hold on to.
Yes. If it's really wet, the smoke will just run off. The smoke will hit the water, it'll condense and become sort of like a dark black ash, and it'll just run off the meat. Okay? We want the smoke to really penetrate into this meat, and if it's wet, it won't do that. Okay? Before we put this into the smoker, though, I'm just going to take some spices that my lovely assistants weighed for me. It took them seven hours. So I'm just going to use a sort of medium to low heat, and I just want to toast these spices off a little bit just to release some of the oil. Okay? Dried spices are always best to be toasted before use. Okay? So we're just going to toast these off in a little pan here just to release some of the oil, and they'll become kind of fragrant. Okay? So in here I've got pink peppercorns, coriander seeds, white peppercorns, chili flakes, fennel seeds, and black peppercorns. Okay? And this is, a lot of people have different recipes. Okay? This is a common blend of spices that would be going on to pastrami before it goes in the smoker. Okay? So I'm just going to put that in the pan there and just let that toast off a little bit. I've got a spice grinder there that I'm going to use just to coarsely grind the spice. I don't want a fine powder, I just want a coarse grind. Okay? So that's toasting. I'll also just quickly show you. So this is our smoker. So smokers come in a variety of different forms. Purchase actual smoker units. This particular device here is specifically made for this oven, Rationale, and it comes from the same company. Okay, these are sort of the best combi ovens you can buy on the market, and this is a specific device used to go inside that smoker. Okay, and basically it's just a big, looks like a small shoebox, and inside is a heating element. You can turn the camera on. Okay, come on now. Come on now. Not the whole tripod. But this is gonna look like a Japanese Godzilla movie. Anyways, the heating element inside heats up and it starts to burn our wood. Okay. So when we use this, I've got some wood chips here. Okay, and these are beech wood. There's different types of wood you can use for smoking. Okay, there's pecan wood, apple wood, cider wood, cedar wood. And most of the Taiwanese imports are only beech wood. Okay, so I've been soaking these overnight. And what I'm going to do is put a little bit of dry I'm going to put a little bit of dry, unsoaked wood in there first, just to help start the smoking process. Okay, and then I'm going to put some wet wood chips on top. And so by doing that, I'll be able to make the smoking process a little bit more long lasting. If I just put in all dry chips on top, the smoke produced would be very, very powerful, and it would be kind of overwhelming. And so the outside of the meat product would get very, very smoky before the inside got smoked. Okay, so you'd have a very unbalanced final product. So this is just going to go into our oven. And that's it. We just let that start to build up with smoke. Thank you. You can probably just turn it, no? Okay. Well, I'll let you deal with that. Okay, so now our spices are toasting off here a little bit. And they become really, really fragrant. Okay, you can start to smell them pretty easily. And it won't take very long, okay? You should be able to smell all those chilies and the peppercorns and stuff. So now I want to just very, very coarse grind on these spices. So it's got a nice coarse grind of spices, so it's not too fine where it'll be too bitter to eat, but it's coarse enough to eat without being too overpowering or too strong to eat, too strong to taste. What I'm going to do now is, you don't actually have to wash that pan right now, you can just sit down. Or wash it, whatever. So I've got our pastrami here, okay? I'm going to transfer this to an oven rack. This is the same rack that would go inside of our oven. So again, this is basically cured or brined for a week, okay? Excess brine we get rid of, right? We don't keep it for anything else. And then I'm just going to liberally coat the top of our pastrami with our spice mix. Okay, then this, we're just going to load up into the smoker. And normally I would smoke this for about 6 hours, but we don't have time for that today. So I'll finish smoking this tomorrow in my next class. And the combination oven here I've got set to the lowest possible temperature and 0 moisture. Okay, so I want to reduce the amount of humidity inside the chamber there and also the lowest amount of heat because I don't really want to cook it strong, I just want to smoke it for now. Later I'll turn the heat up to start cooking it. Alright. Any questions so far about that? Pretty straightforward, right? When people are doing smoking, some people are very particular about the type of wood they use. For example, in the southern U.S., they use a lot of apple wood or pecan wood for smoking, especially in places like New Orleans and Memphis. So they're very particular about the type of wood they use. They don't just use any wood. Here, we can only really get one wood. Because smoking here is not a huge industry, smoking meats and stuff like that. So the companies that do import smoking chips generally only import one type, okay? You shouldn't just use any kind of wood, by the way. Don't just go out to the forest and chop down a tree and start smoking things, okay? Some wood has a very bitter, unpleasant taste after it smokes. So don't just go out to your local forest and lop down a tree and start burning stuff, okay? That's not really a good idea.
So which type do you prefer?
Depends on what I'm making. But hickory and mesquite are good. This one I think this is beechwood. Beechwood's pretty good. It's sort of an all-purpose kind of wood chip. It's fairly decent for most things. I like mesquite wood. Pecan wood's really nice, but it's really pricey because pecan trees are not exactly a super common tree. You know, just go walking around like, oh, there's a pecan tree.
There's a lot where I live.
Yeah, there are lots down south for sure, yeah. Southern Texas and New Orleans, that area, there's lots of them down there. So they have a very good access to pecan trees down there. That's why they use a lot of them for southern barbecue. It's the most common. Now, we are going to get on to our guanciale. So, you two, come on up here. So you have to do a bit of math here, gentlemen. So I need a scale. So in your recipe for the guanciale, if you open your book, you'll see that the recipe is based on percentages. So what you're going to do is first, bring the scale over here. Keep track of how much this pork cheek weighs. Understand? So you're going to want to get a pen and just write this down, okay? So you see your recipe there? It's all in percentages, right? So this is the entire pork cheek, okay? So this comes from sort of this section right here. The jawbone would run down like this, okay? And so in a lot of Taiwanese dishes, you'll see the jowl, which is the under part here, with this part removed and the skin removed, okay? So what we're going to do is just weigh up here. So write this down, 1.4. Start taking them out of the bags, one please. 1.7. 1.4. 1.3. 1.6. 1.4. 2. That's the last one.
No.
1.6. Should have 8 numbers there, yeah? Is that right? So you have 8 numbers there, is that right? So what's the total? So 12,800 grams. Yeah, right? Okay, so now look at your recipe, and then you have to calculate those numbers. Understand? So we have, what did you say, 12.8?
Yes.
So we have 12,800 grams of pork cheek. So you guys start to also calculate the amounts you need. Looking at your recipe, the pork cheek is 100%, right? Right? So what's the first ingredient on that recipe? What? Cure number 2? Cure number 2?
Yes.
Yeah, how much is it?
0.
What? No, not 25%.
0.
Jesus Christ. If it was 25%, we'd be dead. 0.25%. Okay. So you have to go down and start to figure out
32
each.
grams.
What?
32.
32 grams. 32 grams, right? Yeah. But all of you start to go through and calculate that. You have to practice using percentages to figure out your totals. There's sugar, there's salt, there's cure number 2, there's spices. Write everything down first, then we're going to compare. We're going to compare students' numbers.
Chef, Ern has something to say.
Who?
Ern.
Ern?
Ern.
What's up, Ern?
The weight of the pot is 12.4.
12.4?
Yeah, 12.8.
She says 12.8. Huh? What? Don't worry about the trimming.
She calculated 12.4.
There's like 200 grams here. You calculate 12.4? She says 12.4. You say 12.8. So now you have to do it again. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, but in here. You guys want an abacus? Just use a calculator. I don't get it. You guys have phones and you only use them for TikTok. When you need them for math, you're like, oh, let me do it in my head. I haven't used this thing in a while. 12.4, huh?
Yes.
Whoever's wrong loses a finger. Okay? Japanese style.
And then go.
While we're waiting for Stephen Hawking over here to figure out the key to the universe, I'm gonna take some vinegar. And this is just regular strength white vinegar, which is I think about 5% acidity. So it's quite strong vinegar. And I'm going to take an equal measure of water. Okay. And I'm going to make just a bit of a vinegar bath. And I'm just going to give a quick rinse to this pork, okay? Can anyone tell me what this might be doing? Why am I giving this vinegar giving this pork a little vinegar bath? Anybody? Think back to hygiene and safety. Do you remember the 6 factors of microbial growth? What are they? Moisture? pH level. Exactly. So what is the vinegar doing? Don't just say pH. What is it doing? It's raising the pH, making it more acidic, right? Which would then kill what? Bacteria. So what I'm doing is just rinsing it with a little bit of vinegar solution here just to kill any because I got the skin on it still, right? And the skin is really an area that has potential for a lot of bacteria, right? So I'm just going to rinse this off a little bit, okay? And you'll actually see the water after. It's quite murky or muddy looking, okay? So do we have 12.4 or 12.8? Oh my God, say goodbye to a finger. You can pick which finger you'd like to lose today. I'm nice like that. I'll let you decide. And what we're going to make is we're going to take her finger, we're going to cure it, and we'll make some salami out of it. A nice little bit of salami out of that finger, huh? Or you can drink the vinegar solution. Your choice. So are you guys working out the numbers here? Based on 12.4? I'm going to sign you up for a math class, okay? Yeah. Don't worry though, the Japanese guy is really smart. So 12.4, so 12,400 grams, right? Have you guys worked out? And you can see, I don't know if you can see in here or not, but the bowl, are these TVs on? No, right? Okay, next time make sure we turn the TV on. You can see inside the bowl that it's full of blood now and kind of impurities that the vinegar sucks out of it. And this I'm just going to let it drip dry for a little bit. And this will be tossed off to the side. So where are we at here? Put it down, let's take a look. Okay, what the hell did I say? 31 grams, 0.03? 0.031?
Yeah.
What?
It's wrong.
Yeah,
31.
it'll be 31 grams.
30.1 grams.
Huh?
3.1 grams.
3.1?
She is in kg.
Why would you do a kg? You're not going to weigh a kilogram.
Right?
Just move to decimal, yo. I don't even know grams, but just move to decimal.
Woo! Yes! I'll give you guys some math homework, I think.
What's the conversion rate from grams to ounces?
62.5. 0.25% of 12,400 grams. Hey, genius. Did you figure this out? Oh, God damn it. You're like my unicorn, my shining star here. 0.25% of 12,400 grams is 62.5 grams. get a phone and do it properly so we can actually. That's why I asked you guys to also start figuring it out. Right, this is like an exercise in how not to do things. You figured it out? All right, come on up here. Yeah, whatever. Get out of the way.
Hey, Richie. Hold up. Get out of the way. Follow it, guys.
This is a fair break. Yeah, break.
All right.
The monster has been released.
Go around. Then you can show Larry, Curly, and Mo. Yeah, good. 0.25% of 12,400. Yeah, correct. Didn't know I keep my calculator. That can't be right. All right, Richie Rich. Now you're going to start weighing up the spices. Plastic container. I brought one. Right there. So get your spices and start weighing up. Get another bowl, big bowl, put it into. For example, this one. Yeah, not like everything does work together.
How about that?
What's the date today? March 9th?
10.
March 10th. All right. Here, number 2. So we're going to I'll do the cure. You can do the cure. I'm fairly certain that you guys must have heard of a recipe called carbonara. Yeah, you guys have heard of that before? Probably the most incorrectly made, pasta in the history of Italian food ever.
These guys, weird carbonara. Weird.
It's very, very rare to find a true carbonara, especially in Asia. Can anyone tell me what actually goes in carbonara? Well, eggs. Some Italians put whole eggs, some put egg yolks. Kosher sauce. Anyone else? What else? There's pasta, right? Yeah, okay. What else? Guanciale, yeah. If you don't have guanciale, there's another meat you can use. pancetta, yeah, which is what we're making today. Okay, but traditionally it's made from guanciale, which is the air-cured pork cheek. So we have pasta, we have eggs, either whole eggs or egg yolks. Some people put a bit of yolk and whole egg, doesn't matter. Guanciale, what else? What kind of cheese? Huh? No, pecorino. Traditionally it's made of pecorino cheese, which is like Parmesan, but it's made from goat milk. So it's the same as Parmesan. It's a long-aged, hard, dry cheese. But unlike Parmesan, which is made from cow's milk, pecorino is made from goat milk. But a lot of people use Parmesan, okay? And the final ingredient? Sorry?
Pasta water.
Pasta water, yes. And
Because of the starch.
yes, there's starch in the pasta water from cooking the pasta. So we add a little bit of water and starch to help make the sauce for our pasta, okay? Typically, every time I order, I don't order carbonara anymore, but when I do get carbonara, it's usually terrible bacon, cream, garlic, and all kinds of other stuff. Broccoli, baby corn, all kinds of weird stuff in there, okay? But it's definitely not any of those things.
Does the taste of the cheese from the goat milk different than the Parmesan?
What?
The cheese from
The goat? Pecorino.
yeah.
Yeah.
The taste different.
A little, yeah, of course, they're different they're different animals, right? It's a little bit saltier. Pecorino cheese, when they make pecorino cheese, a traditional, has anyone here ever seen a wheel of Parmesan cheese? A whole wheel? Up close, yeah, they're about this big, okay, and they're about this tall, okay? And the best Parmesan cheese is called Parmigiano Reggiano, okay? And then that's quite expensive, that's about 1,000 NT per kilogram. Okay, so about $30 US per kilo, okay? We get it for free.
Whole wheel? The whole wheel?
The whole wheel?
Yes, sure.
The whole
1% of 12,000 is about 1,240.
It's just 124.
All right. I think I don't trust you guys with math. Jesus.
So we get
This is
the whole
amazing.
wheel.
I thought you guys were good at math. Have you figured this out? All right, come up here, please. You have to double check their numbers here. Double check the numbers, please. And then this is what, gear number 2? Wait, hey, you got gear number 2 here?
Right.
31 grams, right?
Yeah, that's
I know the salt, right? Wow. I take that back.
Do like you know, like 1% over 100, and then X over like well, simple. That, you know.
I don't think so. Okay, well that was interesting. All right. Guys, let's get this weight up, please. Let's get this weight up, please. Let's get this weight up, please. All right. So while they're attempting to maybe possibly figure out this complicated problem, what we're going to do with this here, I'm just going to give it a quick dry, just to get some of that vinegar off. So if you don't have guanciale, you can use pancetta, okay, which is what we're going to make after this. Right after this, we're going to make pancetta. And basically, both of these, pancetta and guanciale, are both air-cured pork products. Okay. These we will need to leave. The guanciale we leave for about 4 weeks. Okay, are you okay? Just like, I don't even hear a beat, but I guess you got one. These we're going to leave in the storeroom downstairs for about 4 weeks until they lose about 25% of their weight. Okay? And we're going to do the exact same process as we did before. We're going to weigh up our curing mixture, hopefully. And then we're going to rub them down with our spices, and then we're going to put them into vacuum packs, put them into the fridge, and let them cure for a week until they're firm. Okay, a week to 10 days. Then we'll wash them off. Then I'll put meat hooks through the skin and hang them to dry. Okay, to air dry. Once they're air drying, it is not advisable to touch them with your hands. Okay, especially your hands, because you guys don't wash your hands very often. The reason being is that your hands probably have a lot of bacteria on them, and if you touch that's not going to help. But if you touch the meat with your bare hands, you're more than likely going to transfer bacteria from your hands to the meat, which is then going to cause the meat to grow bacteria and spoil. Okay, so it's best to not touch them at all, except for the time that you need to weigh them. Don't go in there and poke them. Okay? I know that you guys love to do that stuff. At any rate, it's best to just leave them, let them cure. After about 3 weeks, using latex gloves, weigh them on a sanitized scale and measure the weight, see how much they weigh. Okay? We're looking for about a 25% drop in weight loss. Where does that weight loss come from? What are we losing weight from? Water, right? Water is evaporating, right? So what happens to the flavor as water evaporates? You get less or more? More, right? We get a concentrated flavor, okay? So that's the same, that's true with any kind of curing or aging process. When you're looking to evaporate water from a meat or a fish, it concentrates the flavor. Okay, and we'll go into that more in detail when we talk about dry aging. Okay, we're talking about dry aging beef in a few weeks. Alright, how is this circus going over here?
Almost done.
She just shakes it, something starts flying out of the container.
Is Cisco the sponsor?
No, Cisco is not used in Taiwan, but the company that imports Cisco is one of our sponsors. I wish Cisco was here, because that would be really make my life a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for ordering,
Yeah.
make my life a whole
My
lot
dad
easier.
works from Cisco.
Ordering here is, yeah, I don't know. All right, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Somebody, I feel like I just won like an Academy Award. Like, oh, I'd like to thank my agent, my mathematics team here. You know, we're going to the moon next week. Don't go anywhere, because we've got another recipe to do after this. So again, we're just going to mix this up. We got our cure number 2. Okay. So what does cure number 2 have? Salt and
Nitrate.
you guys make a bit more noise, please. Salt, sodium nitrate, and sodium nitrate. So cure number 2 is both, right? It's nitrite and nitrate. You're also going to need to know the proportions, okay? How much salt, how much nitrite, how much nitrate, okay? Now there's different countries, different companies have different blends, okay? So you might find a cure number 2 that's less or more in the proportions, okay? But for all intents and purposes in this course, we're going to use the ones that I have in the book, okay? So that's, I would say, the most common you would see worldwide. You might see some that are slightly less nitrate and higher nitrite. But for what we're doing here, we're going to use what we have in the book, okay? Similar in a way to, for example, the classifications of fires. If you remember back to food hygiene and safety, some countries have different classifications. They call an electrical fire something else, okay? But for our course, we just use what I have in the book. But every country is slightly different. Okay, so now we've mixed together our spices. And again, I'm just going to take a nice handful of this.
Why do you think carbonara is commonly made incorrectly?
Incorrectly?
Yeah.
Why do I say that?
No. Like, why do you think is the main reason people...
Sorry, I can't quite hear you.
I said, why do you think is the main reason why people make it incorrectly? That things so wrong?
Because they don't know how to make it. Lack of education, I guess. I mean, I shouldn't say that. Yeah, you know what, I will say that. See, they don't know any better. Which is fine, I mean, that's okay, but the problem with that is like, can you imagine if I made like beef noodle soup, like Taiwanese beef noodle soup, right? And I used spaghetti or something like that? Or I used like a different, you know, if I just made it differently, Taiwanese people would be like, what do you do? They'd be like, you know, I get that access to something like guanciale or pancetta, they're expensive, right? But then you really shouldn't call it something that it's not, right? Just call it, you know, Alfredo with bacon or something, you know? I feel like a lot of people label it carbonara because it sounds, you know, like...
Would you say that about Chinese American food then?
I would, yeah, but Chinese American food is a classification of food unto itself, right? Chinese American food was created by Chinese people in San Francisco for Americans, right? So that's a bit different. They created a style of food for a specific set of people, right? And there's similarities, and that's a really good question actually. There's definitely similarities between how people appropriate foods and change them to make their own tastes suited. But something like carbonara is a very specific dish, right? A lot of the dishes you see in American Chinese food, they don't even have in China. You know, like lemon chicken.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you don't. I've been all over China and I've yet to see lemon chicken,
Or
especially
orange
like
chicken.
lemon chicken, like the American. Has anyone ever had like real American Chinese food here? I know you have, and I have. But like lemon chicken. You guys know what lemon meringue pie is?
Orange chicken is worse
Orange
than
chicken,
lemon.
yeah. I'm just trying to make a point here. You guys ever had a lemon meringue pie? So, what? No. Okay, do you guys know what lemon curd is? Like a lemon tart? Yeah? So lemon tart, the filling of a lemon tart is almost the same as what they put on lemon chicken in American Chinese food. It's like yellow, bright. It looks unnatural. Okay? It does. It looks like it came from space. It looks like Montgomery Burns after lightly irradiating himself. Anyways, my point is that you know, Chinese American food was designed specifically as a business model, right? Because they realized that the American, and this, I mean, Chinese American food dates back to probably the 50s, maybe a little bit later.
Railroads.
Yeah, well, the railroad came first because the Chinese were slaves to build the railroad, right? That's how the Chinese got. I don't know if you guys know much about North American history, but the Chinese were brought over as slaves, basically slaves, to build the North American railroad system in Canada and U.S. And then after the railroad was built, they were allowed to remain. At any rate, a lot of Chinese Americans, they opened up restaurants because that was a common thing in China, right? And they realized that there was not a big enough market for Americans because the American palate. If you think about something like Sichuan cuisine, right? The traditional Sichuan cuisine is quite spicy, right? And American palates, they weren't really used to that kind of spice. American palates were very bland.
They also didn't have access to those ingredients.
Yeah, there was a lack of access to ingredients as well. Yeah, sure, they had to adapt to what they could use. But to make Americans more susceptible to their style of food, they had to really adjust it and change a lot of the dishes to fit the American palate. Because the American palate, I mean, Americans are immigrants from Europe, right? Pretty much, right? Unless you're Native American, then you're not. But that doesn't count.
Excuse me, sir.
Hi.
Our coffee is finished.
Your what?
Can you take it out?
You what?
Are dark confit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, thanks.
Don't worry about it. The American palate was designed basically from Europeans, right? And I don't know if you know much about British food, but it's pretty boring. Okay? Fish and chips, mushy peas, burger sauce, you know? So the Chinese American cuisine had to be designed in order to make it more palatable for them. Okay, and that's where that whole thing comes from. But that's slightly different from carbonara, right? That's a whole section of food. I mean, it's considered a classification of food unto itself. Whereas carbonara is a dish from Italy that people just don't know how to make properly, or just put it on a menu for the sake of having it on a menu, right? Anyways, so our guanciale, we've rubbed it down now. So you want to take 2 pieces and put them in here, please? Don't, lay it flat, don't. Okay, that's fine. Keep going. And we're going to do the exact same thing. We're just going to vacuum pack them. So careful, so delicate. Really. And the extra in here. And we'll split it up equally amongst the 4 bags. Okay. That's fine. Don't worry. You can leave that. Just leave it right there. Gotta take care of it. So then again, the excess cure, we're just going to split up equally into the 4 bags. And then we're going to vacuum pack them again. And we'll let these cure for about 7 to 10 days. We'll rinse off the cure. We'll coat them in some spices on the meat side only. And then we'll let them air hang to dry out until they've lost roughly 25% of their total volume. Okay, now the next recipe. Open your book. You have your book still open, right? I can do this one. The next recipe we're going to go to is pancetta. Okay? Don't worry about it. Hello. So what you need to do now is start to weigh out the ingredients. We're going to use some vinegar. And again, give them a bath. Using half white vinegar, half water.
Richie, use your
Pancetta comes in two varieties, okay? There's a rolled pancetta, okay, which is what we're gonna make, or there's a flat pancetta, okay? The flat pancetta looks more like bacon, but it's not smoked, okay? So it's got a whiter color, as opposed to bacon, which has a dark brown color. The flat pancetta is just a white color, okay? We're gonna roll ours because I prefer the rolled kind, and it's more common to see the rolled kind. And you? You're standing like this, taking the entire walkway. So now we're doing a little math here, you know. Oh, you need to get by it? Oh. So same thing, we're just gonna wash our pork belly here in vinegar and water, just to remove any excess bacteria that may be on the belly, okay?
Richie, lady, you little Polly guy. Double leg.
Roughly, yeah. Yeah, okay. Sure. So the guanciale that we make is going to hang for about 3 to 4 weeks downstairs, okay, depending on the weight loss. And this pancetta is going to hang for about 2 months, okay, so for about 8 weeks downstairs, okay, out of refrigeration, not in the fridge. Now obviously you have to be somewhat careful when you do this, right? The reason I'm using the storage room downstairs is because they keep the air conditioners on in there all the time. So the temperature in that room is about 10 degrees, 12 degrees all the time, and the humidity is quite low. So if you look at countries where this stuff is made, Spain, Italy, Germany, they all share one thing in common, is that up in the mountains, they don't make this kind of meat down by sea level because it's too hot, too humid, right? So up in the mountainous areas, its average temperature is cooler and the humidity is less, okay? So that's why I use the storage room downstairs, because air conditioners naturally withdraw moisture from the air, right? They make rooms drier, and they leave the air conditioners on all the time, so the average air temperature in there is cold enough where it won't promote bacteria growth. Okay? If I hung this outside here, in about 2 days it'd be covered in cockroaches and bacteria. So that's obviously not what I want, right? So you have to be mindful of the surrounding conditions when you're making this, right? You need a cool climate with relatively low humidity, okay? 65% relative humidity in the atmosphere. Taiwan naturally is far too humid and too hot to do this in, okay? So you need to make sure that the surrounding environment is conducive to making cured products, okay? All right, so now we've got our guanciale almost all vacuum packed. When you're curing meats like this as well, if you're concerned about the bacteria in the air, okay, you can also put a tray of salt water underneath your meats. Okay, and what happens is as the salt water evaporates, it creates a bit of a microclimate around your meat with salt in the air that kills bacteria. So you can kind of control a little bit the bacteria growth in the atmosphere by putting salt water underneath. Okay? I'm not too concerned with that because we're using nitrites and nitrates, but if you weren't using nitrites and nitrates, you could do that as well. You could put a saltwater bin underneath, and that'll help to control a little bit of a microclimate under there. Can you guys smell the smoke now? Yeah, it's becoming quite strong. Yeah. So I just used my torch here to fire it up a little bit, get it going a little bit more. Which I'm going to do again. Well, there's hot smoking and cold smoking. Okay, this particular style that I'm doing here would be considered hot smoking, even though the temperature is quite low. Technically, cold smoking is done with using two separate machines. Okay, so you have a machine, a burner that generates smoke, and the smoke would then travel through a pipe to cool down into a chamber where your product is. Okay, so for example, something like salmon, right, which is probably one of the more common things that is hot and cold smoked. Salmon, if it's hot smoked, the smoke and salmon will be in the same chamber. If it's cold smoked, the smoke will be generated in one location and the smoke will then pass through a tube to cool down before reaching the salmon. Okay? If I wanted a cold smoke with this machine here, I'd probably put a tray of ice in between the smoke and the salmon. So that as the smoke passed down, it would cool down from the ambient air temperature of the ice that's in there, and it would cold smoke. You got everything? What's this? Cure number 2. And there's salt in here already?
Yes.
Thank you, I can see that. Yeah. Say yes to it. All right. Doesn't seem like it's enough. Let me see your recipe. Let me see what you guys did there. I want to double check your amounts.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't seem like it's enough. You finish something, throw it in the garbage, please. I can't tell you how many times I see students use something, it's empty, and they just put it back. Like, no one's gonna notice. Just throw it out, please. So we're gonna whip up another batch of bacon with that pork belly, since we have extra now. and we always need bacon. What's up, Leia? No, sir. See what it says there? We're smoking. We're not smoking. So we get both of our flats here, our pork belly flats, covered on all sides with our spices. We really want to rub it into the fat side a bit. See that there? We want to make sure that all sides get a nice coating. You guys aren't done yet? No, you're not done. Oh, you're done? Oh, my apologies. I didn't know you were done. You're not done. There should be some bags there for pancetta. You see? Hold it down, please. See, now we've got all coated, right? All the meat side, all the fat side, very well coated. We'll load it into our bags. And again, we take half of the cure in one bag, half the cure in another. Open it for the next one. Okay. And those you can just put in the vacuum machine and start the vacuum pack, please. Now you can see our smoke is really starting to generate, right? And this I'd like to smoke ideally for about 6 hours. Unfortunately, we don't have the time here to do that for 6 hours, but that's not a big deal. I can smoke it later in a different class, so it won't be a problem. I'll just... You can do it. There goes our vacuum machine. One of you can wash this up, please. It doesn't take 3 people. Load it in there flat. Wash it up. All the way to the back of the machine. Make sure it's flat. Pull it down. Make sure it's on the bar. Okay. Close the lid a little bit. Okay. It'll open up by itself with the pressure. Now we need to do our bacon. So a majority or a lot of the meat that we make in this class you guys are going to use next semester for the rest of your cooking class. Okay? So the pancetta you guys will use for cooking with, the guanciale you guys will make carbonara with, the bacon we use for lots of things. We put bacon on everything. It makes everything taste better. So our pig cheeks now are vacuum packed. Okay. Like I said, we'll cure these for another week in the fridge. Okay. Flipping over every day. Okay. Flipping the bag over once every day. The same thing will go for our pancetta. Cure for approximately a week as well. Again, flip it over every time. There's actually smoke coming out from the ceiling. Very strange. Pancetta, same thing. 7 to 10 days we'll cure it. Once it's done in the cure, we're going to take it out of the cure, wash it, dry it, and then just the meat side we're going to coat in spices and then roll it up and tie it very tight so that no air can get into the center of the roll. If we get too much air going into the middle of the roll, we're going to get bacteria growth or mold growth. Okay? Can I get that metal tray back, please? And you see all those bags over there? Richie, all those bags? Get all those bags, please. That's fine. We're just going to use it for this anyway, so. You can put the bacon in here and bring it over. Yeah, that piece there. Those two go. No, not those. Not those. Those four, yes, over here. Those two, just into the pork belly bag. Okay. Right here, please. Where you going? Just like I'm out of here. All right, so you guys can do this, please. You can help. Put a little massage there after the pan. And same thing, just put it in the machine, lay it flat. Pull the bar in. Don't. You just got one area. You need to cover the whole thing. Then you just pile it up in one area, like a mountain. That's unnecessary. Sprinkle side to side, side to side. Flip it over and do the next side. Woo! It is smoking back here. When I was a kid, I was quite lucky actually. My mother and father were fairly into food. They were very, they enjoyed good food, my parents, My dad, he really loved to smoke. He used to make bacon at home, and we used to smoke salmon. We used to make our own smoked salmon. And so as a kid, I got to sort of see my dad, making sausages and hunting animals and skinning a deer and cutting up a deer and making stuff out of the deer. And, so it was a good childhood to learn how to make some of this stuff. And this is kind of a skill that in the early 1970s and 1980s in cooking, making your own meat products was very common, right? It was very popular and it was very trendy, right? And then as we got into the 80s and 90s with the expanse of food industries and food science and machinery, right, engineering, this products and this type of cooking sort of went away because it was all mechanicalized, right? It was all automated. It became cheaper to buy bacon and buy pancetta and stuff like that from factories, right? Because it was made by machines, it was bulk purchases, right? It was volume purchases, so it made it cheaper. But then customers became more conscious of what they're eating. Not that eating bacon is good for you, right? It's not great, okay? Because it's a lot of fat, right? But it's bacon, right? I mean, and what you gonna do about it, right? So use it all. Use it all. Get all, rub all, get in your fingers. Give it a massage. So as the advances in food production technology and engineering became more prevalent in the industry, hotels and companies became more conscious of the dollar value, right? They realized it's cheaper just to buy bacon from a large company, right? But now, because customers have access to information, right? Telephones, right? Everybody's a food critic now, right? Everybody's a foodie, a food expert. Not really, but people have access to food information though, right? And so by doing that, customers became far more aware of what they're eating, how it's made, right? And now the customer trend, or one of the customer trends, veers more towards things that are handmade, okay? More like locally sourced, handmade, homemade, so that people are a little more aware of what's in it, okay? Generally speaking, foods that are made by corporations are not made for your health, right? They're made for the bottom line. You understand the term bottom line? Bottom line is your profit, right? The bottom line is your operating cost versus your income, right? So corporations cook very differently. You look at a company like McDonald's, right? I may have talked to you guys about McDonald's in the food safety class, right? I probably brought it up, but corporations cook. You know, these are so gently, just gently, grain by grain of salt, counting it's 1 grain for you, and 1 grain for you, and 1 grain for you. So this bacon is going to take 17,000 years to get made. Micro salt bay. So as far as corporations go when they produce food, corporations cook in a very different manner, right? They're cooking to get you to buy things over and over again with very little regard to your actual health, right? Everything. French fries, sugar, salt, fat. Apple pie, sugar, salt, fat. Milkshake, sugar, salt, fat. Everything. Just in different proportions. Those 3 things are very addictive to the human body, right? We all love salt. Who doesn't love a bag of chips, right? Delicious. Who doesn't love a little ice cream? Delicious, right? So people love salty food, fatty food, and sugary food. Naturally, it's what we like, right? It's like comforting to us as humans, right? It's very addictive, right? McDonald's realized that. They engineer their food to contain always those 3 things, always. So nowadays, it's really important to be able to produce your own handmade bacon or pancetta or sausages or salami, right? Smoked salmon, cured salmon. These things are all very common nowadays. And if you don't know how to make them, you're going to be sort of left behind. Okay, here we go. Is there 4 bags? Yeah. Wonderful. You guys all have boning knives in your kit? You all have boning knives? Everybody has a boning knife? Really? Is it mandatory in your kit now? Required in your kit? You know what I mean by a boning knife, right? Alright, because you're going to need it when you guys butcher chickens. Not next week. Sorry? I think it's week 4 or week 5, yeah. Or week 6? I think it's week 6. I think you're right. Yeah, week 6. So make sure in week 6 you bring your knives, because you're going to have to bone out a chicken. Put a little bit in each bag, right? Put a little bit in each bag. So those you can start to vacuum pack as well. Next week, we're going to start to, next week when we come to class, the bacon, I've already smoked the bacon in my Monday class because I need a long time. But it'll be finished when you guys come to class so you can see the final product. So you've seen how we make it, how we cure it, and then the smoking process is the same. Okay, I'm using a Rational oven, same wood chips, same setup, low temperature, medium fan, low humidity, but just a much longer smoking period, okay? We're also going to start making our Kassler Schinken, which is a smoked brine, smoked pork loin from Germany. So we're going to start brining that next week. And we're also going to roll our pancetta next week. And we're going to hang our guanciale next week as well, okay? So next week we're going to have 5 or 6 things going on. Week 6, as I said, remember to bring your knives, okay? You're going to have to, yeah. Chicken? Yeah. So week 5, bring your knives, okay? Because week 5, you're all going to be out there. I'll show you how to debone a chicken one way, or 2 ways, and then you're going to do it one way, okay? Week 6, remember to bring something to eat with, okay? Because we're going to be eating that day. The same with week 7. and check your e-learning today after 3 p.m. and your first writing assignment will be all there in detail. Okay? We can start to tidy up now, and we're pretty much done for the day, so let's start to tidy up.